WFSB Plus original. This is the Capitol Rundown.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Capitol Rundown, where we bring you the issues that matter to you from both sides of the aisle here in Connecticut. I'm Kara Sundlun, and I'm joined by, for the Democrats, Democratic strategist Jimmy Tickey, and for the Republicans, former House Leader Themis Klarides. Thank you both for being here. It sounds like a broken record when we say it's a busy week, but I encourage you to go back on WFSB Plus and watch our 2-hour special on the first day of session, because that was amazing. We heard so many voices. The big issue that we keep hearing both nationally and here is still this idea of ICE and the funding around it. And now we're facing a deadline for the government to possibly shut down at least part of it over ICE funding. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about it on the macro level of what's happening in Washington. And Jimmy, let's start with you, because Rosa DeLauro saying that she might not do what other Democrats are doing.
So right now there's a big disagreement happening in the Senate and in the House as well, where Democrats are not interested in just funding ICE blindly. They want more accountability. They want measures around these ICE agents. They want body cameras on, masks off. They want more training. They want more accountability with what we've been seeing, and they want to draw down the ICE agents that are already in Minnesota, really causing chaos in the streets and really escalating these matters. And so many members agree that ICE needs major reforms, and we need to be working on that. This is all a part of the DHS budget, which is the Department of Homeland Security. So we had passed a budget. That budget now runs through actually Friday the 13th, as it would be, and it does not appear that there is an agreement in place. And so it does look like, at least right now, that you would see a partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security budget, which would not allow new ICE funding to flow to that department, but also could have impacts with FEMA and also TSA, because that is currently still housed under the Department of Homeland Security. So not a wide government shutdown, but pretty narrow to those efforts under Department of Homeland Security.
So would ICE agents not show up for work in places like Minneapolis?
Well, many would hope they wouldn't, because we don't need ICE and we trust our local and state police. But through the big, beautiful bill, there was still some ICE funding. So there will still be some ICE funding in play from previous bills that were passed. This is regular funding that is now through the next either continuing resolution, which is a period of time, or through the end of September. There's different bills that are saying different things, but the principle is that there's funding for ICE on the table. And Democrats don't want that unless there are major accountability measures.
And Themis, it seems to me that maybe not all Republicans are united either, that some really are very excited about ICE. Still, we had that on the Capitol Rundown with Betsy McCoy saying she calls ICE nice. And then there are others who seem to be kind of siding with Democrats a little bit on some measures, some parameters. What's your take on what's going to happen?
Well, I certainly don't think we need ICE, but we need a well-trained ICE and a properly prepared ICE, right, to make sure they take care of people the way we believe that our state and local police officers do. Number one, as far as the funding for them, that funding in the big, beautiful bill, I mean, that was a lot of funding. So I think the majority of funding will still be there, regardless of whether an agreement happens in the next few days or not. Hopefully an agreement will happen and they'll move forward. But I do know that the Senate Majority Leader, Thune, back a few weeks ago, I mean, they had already agreed to body cameras, and so many Republicans agreed to that. Body cameras and the training issues and that kind of thing that majority of people do agree with. They just have to sit down with the House and the Senate and the Republicans and the Democrats. I mean, there's technical things that have to be done here where the leaders meet, you know, and the president weighs in, and then they have to vote in the House and the Senate, and hopefully they will get that, because I do believe we need ICE, but we need a well-trained and well-prepared ICE to make sure they're doing the job that they're supposed to be doing.
And we actually saw this play out on the first day of session right here in Connecticut, because Representative Kara I'm not even sure how to actually... Pavlock. Okay, so she's a Republican from Bristol. And she wore that ICE in shirt. And that was certainly showing her viewpoints, may have been in contrary to some of the people who were protesting here in Connecticut. But now we know that Matt Ritter has also called both sides of the aisle in to say, we need to quell this behavior. We can't have these type of outward T-shirts, things like that in the halls of our legislature. What's your take on that?
Well, to take a few steps back, this whole thing started with Bad Bunny. at the Grammys. And so a lot of and I will not say Republicans, I will say MAGA, the more extreme, Republicans, didn't like him for several reasons. They believed that he was, he did Spanish speaking, so he wasn't real American, which is ridiculous. Okay, we all understand he's from Puerto Rico, that you're an American, and that is what it is. He was very pro LGBTQ. He dresses in a fluid manner. He's a male, but he wears skirts a lot of times. He's just different. And so some of that group didn't like him in the first place. Then he went to present the Grammys, and he made, he's anti-Trump, he's very pro-migrant, he's very anti-ICE, all of that. And so then people were really worried at the Super Bowl he would come and he would be political, but he was not. He was not political. So that started this whole thing. So when he said ICE out, then Governor Lamont, when he did his speech on the first day of session, was very aggressive about his ICE position. I believe he was more aggressive than he normally would have been because
he led with that.
But he's running for re-election, and he has been a very moderate governor. Right? He's been very fiscally responsible. But some of the progressive left are not thrilled with him and think he should be more progressive. And I believe that he was more aggressive in regards to that because he wanted to, make them happier. But Representative Pavlak D'Amato, this is not the first time she's expressed herself in her clothing, actually got a jacket made that said ICE in the back. And when the governor was making his speech, she turned around and she put up. Now, here's the problem. The Speaker of the House, Speaker Arasemowicz many years ago when I was leader, did the same thing because a Democrat had done something inappropriate within the chamber, locked down the doors, kept everybody in there, and said what Speaker Ritter said the other day. We have rules. And there's actual rules in the House and the Senate for behavior. There's no, I don't want to see placards, I don't want to see T-shirts, I don't want to see signs. You can't, because it is against the rules. And that's what that jacket was. He was saying, I just don't test me. We're here to do a job. We're lucky to be here, and treat everybody with respect. And that's basically what he did. So this has been a culture war issue, and it's gone from the federal level to the state level. And I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
I want to get to Bad Bunny, too, because pop culture, this ICE issue, the reason why we wanted to talk about it so much is because it's popping up everywhere. And first, before we get into the controversy over Bad Bunny, and is this a political partisan, or what do the Republicans and Democrats say, how big of an issue is ICE for us in Connecticut? We're watching what's happening in Minneapolis. We're watching what's happening. But that's a question that's been asked of people when I'm out in the streets. Are we having a lot of issues here in Connecticut, or are we living in a different world right now?
Well, we have seen ICE here. They have been in Danbury and Southington. We have seen them in our towns and in our cities. So there have definitely been proven reports that they have been here. But you never know with this president. So at any moment, ICE agents could come into our schools, our hospitals, and this is why there's federal legislation to say, we don't want them in courthouses, we don't want them in medical institutions, we don't want them at hospitals. So there needs to be more parameters because anything could happen at any time. And a person might think they're safe, or they think they're going to work or bringing their child to school, and all of a sudden you are descended upon by SUVs with men who are wearing masks. So it could happen, and that's the concern. And so putting more parameters around them would help to provide some clarity for people on what to expect.
Do you think Republicans would support parameters like no masks or making sure there's always a warrant?
Listen, this whole notion that we don't need ICE. Again, we need well-trained, responsible ICE agents, just like we need well-trained, responsible police officers. Are there bad police officers? Yes. Are there bad lawyers or bad doctors? There's a bad in every profession, right? What we have seen with ICE is less training. They've lessened the amount of training from 5 months to 2 months, and they've softened all of that so they can get more ICE agents out there so there can be more people. But let's just remember how we got here. That former President Biden opened up the border and let everybody in. So whether Donald Trump was president now or somebody else was president, they would have to deal with the ramifications of that. And I don't agree with how that's been handled. Right? I certainly don't agree with how they've been handling it, but I do agree we need ICE, a properly trained, responsible ICE, to make sure that the people that are supposed to be here are here and the people that are not are not.
Bottom line for the two of you, do you think we'll have a government shutdown on Friday?
I think we will, a partial government shutdown. And I would just note, CBS did a poll of all the folks that this federal administration has rounded up with ICE, and 14% were criminals. Everyone else was erroneously picked up. Parents, children had to let them go. It was an error. And it just goes to show you that these have not been targeted, going after the most violent criminals, which I think many would agree that is what an immigration system should be there for enforcement. It's been willy-nilly. They go in, they create havoc on the streets. And so if we really want to be serious about going after criminals and those who shouldn't be here, pursue a more targeted operation, as President Obama did, rather than what we've been seeing in this administration.
Okay, now let's talk about Bad Bunny, because many people were maybe just watching the Super Bowl. There were others who had very strong opinions. I spoke to people who said they were definitely going to turn it off. They were in protest. They didn't think it was appropriate that all songs would be sung in Spanish. I heard, okay, Bad Bunny hates our country. Why would we pick him? Then there was stuff on the internet, which obviously isn't true. That Bad Bunny is not an American. Of course, he's from Puerto Rico, and that's an American territory. But these things are spilling over, no longer just eating your chips and guacamole. So, Themis, I want to start with you. Was Bad Bunny a bad choice?
Well, first of all, I think we have to stop taking ourselves so seriously and maybe enjoy things for entertainment. Now, I was one of the people that originally thought, well, you know, we're in the United States, and you're having somebody sing it in a different language. I mean, we should maybe do half and half. But then I kind of looked into it more, and I think mostly all of his songs are Spanish. Okay, and I'm fine with that. The bigger issue is Bad Bunny's lyrics are almost all sexually explicit and everything else. So part of the question is that even appropriate, you know, for that kind of audience where you're having a lot of kids watching and that kind of thing? You know, Roger Goodell, who's the commissioner of the NFL, he understands that they are trying to expand their Latino audience and into Latin countries around the world. And
that was their number one business objective.
I believe that was the whole reason for having a Latin artist. And I get that, right? I mean, it is a business decision. My issue is not the you know, that he sang in Spanish. My issue is probably, you know, the lyrics were inappropriate for an all age.
Yeah, and do
audience.
You think, some people said, okay, some songs should be in English if it's the American Super Bowl?
I kind of do, only because, I mean, I speak a few words of Spanish, but I certainly can't understand what he was saying. I mean, I know we were looking at it. He's an artist, and it wasn't just the words, right? I mean, I liked it because I liked all the costumes, right?
The sets were amazing.
And I liked the choreography, and I liked all. I mean, that's the fun part of it. For me, but everybody has different opinions on that.
Yeah, okay. So, and Jimmy, what do you think? Because not that this is not hinging an election, but certainly people are talking about this. And when you have that much discussion about a Super Bowl performer, it's exposing the divisions here in America.
Mm-hmm. And I think the divisions were really led by the president, who really ginned people up around this. And then when I saw photos of the president watching the Super Bowl, he seemed to watch the halftime show. They didn't turn the channel off. I think it was a great halftime show. Bad Bunny's one of the biggest artists in the world right now.
Top stream for the last
absolutely
4 years.
Huge.
No one can argue about his reach.
Huge, a huge reach. I think it was great music. I was watching it with my parents, and yeah, we didn't understand every word, though my mom does speak a lot of Spanish, but it was great music. Pavarotti sang in Italian. There's some American songs that I can't figure out the words to. So I think it's about the music, the vibe, what you bring. I think it was a great halftime show, also with Lady Gaga and Ricky Martin. It felt like a celebration.
And those songs were in English, yeah.
Right.
So it's interesting to see. But it is spilling over as to all of the, pop culture where and one of the reasons we do this show is to bring voices from both sides of the aisle, but certainly we saw even Turning Point USA encouraging people to move over there, but perhaps that was a business move also.
I think it was. I mean, I mean, as important as it is to treat everybody fairly and respectfully and safely and all the things that we believe in as Americans, we also have to take each other ourselves a little less seriously and say, okay, this is entertainment. As long as this person is not, I mean, again, nobody's talking about the fact that his lyrics are so sexually explicit and kids are watching, right? And there's Spanish-speaking kids that are watching it, and they're going to hear that, right? So, I mean, nobody cares about that anymore. We just care that he's from Puerto Rico, which, again, is a territory. You're an American as we are. And so I think it's very difficult to make everybody happy. But we just have to make sure we're treating people with respect and fairness.
And with celebrities, we often see this every couple of months or every election cycle. There's really two opinions. Some people don't like when a celebrity gets involved or endorses a candidate or gets involved politically, but then others say, you have this celebrity, you have this reach, use the platform you have. So sometimes celebrities do that in endorsing a candidate or putting out a position, and then other times they don't. And so in this case, he absolutely is standing up for his country and for Puerto Rico and speaking out against ICE, as many are.
And interesting, the representative that had the ICE-in jacket on the floor of the House had posted that she watched both. I guess she went back and forth, and she enjoyed them both.
Well, look at that.
She watched them both, yes. Okay. Well, from President Trump, he said it was the worst halftime show ever. So that the president chiming in, which is also unusual. We haven't had that as much, where presidents comment as much on halftime shows. But so I want to move on to a big race that you're watching for us and that people might be starting to tune in, and that is the race for the 1st Congressional District. And we've got Congressman John Larson, longtime incumbent, who is coming out fighting, saying he wants to keep his seat. And you've got some challengers, notably former mayor of Hartford, Luke Bronin, who has decided to primary him. And some numbers have come out. Everyone can look these up, but I want to bring our insiders in and see what this means. And since it's a race on your side of the aisle, as vice chair of the party, I'll start with you, Jimmy. What does it mean, these latest fundraising numbers that we're seeing in the 1st congressional race?
We talk about fundraising a lot on this show when we talk about entry into politics. And you don't need a lot of fundraising for a local race, but you do need the fundraising for a federal race. You need to have an operation, have a campaign, be on TV. These congressional races and Senate races require a lot of money to be able to compete, especially if you're going to force a primary, which basically means people of that party can then come out in the summer and then go and vote. Congressman Larson has a lot of support, institutional support, good fundraising numbers, a strong base, and I think he's in strong position throughout the year. But Mayor Bronin does continue to surprise with larger fundraising numbers than the sitting congressman. He does have some political support as well, and so it's really looking like those two certainly will have the ability to compete through the Democratic Convention, which is in May, and then through a Democratic primary, which will be in August. There's two other candidates, Ruth Fortune and Jillian Gilchrist, who are announced and running as well. Far less funding raised for those races, but they are absolutely out there talking to Democratic voters as well.
Okay, and Jillian Gilchrist, far behind Luke Bronin?
In fundraising, yes.
So as someone who was a House leader, run for office many times, Themis, what does it mean? Do these numbers really indicate who wins?
They don't indicate who wins per se. I mean, Luke Bronin raised a little bit more money than Congressman Larson this quarter. They both have, $1 million to $1.5 million money on hand, which means money they have available to spend. And Representative Gilchrist and Ruth Fortune, Representative Gilchrist raised $49,000 this quarter, and Ruth Fortune raised $12,000. So that's clearly a big difference. And that makes, as Jimmy said, a huge difference in this kind of race. But the interesting part of this race is that Representative Jillian Gilchrist is a sitting state representative, and she has run several times, and she lives in West Hartford. West Hartford is one of the most densely populated parts of the 1st Congressional District. So when we go to May and the conventions where people converge from the whole state, and all the Democrats will come in and they will support, not individually, but as a group. Each town has their own little representation, and they will vote for Bronin or Larson or Fortune or Gilchrist. And clearly, Bronin and Larson have the majority of the delegates. But Jillian Gilchrist will have a block that will be very, very important, a block of delegates. And so she is going to play a big role, I think, in this race, not because she can compete money-wise, but she has a lot of people on the ground. She has the grassroots in one of the biggest parts of that district. So who will she give those delegates to when she drops out? Will she give them to the congressman, or will she give them to Luke Bronin? And that might affect...
It's her choice?
That might... Well, as a candidate, you will strongly recommend to the people that support you when you say, I'm getting out of the race, I don't think I can win, I think you should give them to this person or that person. They don't have to.
Okay.
But if somebody's supporting you that strongly, they will typically listen to who you support next. Again, they don't have to, but they typically will. And that could affect who qualifies to primary, because everybody can't just primary in August. You have to get a certain amount of delegates, or you have to get a certain amount of signatures, and it's a big deal. So I think that'll be the part to watch here.
Yeah, and this was, Mayor Luke Bronin, when he decided to run, My understanding is that he went to Congressman Larson and said, you know, you should retire. I'm ready. And Congressman Larson said, no, I'm up for a fight. But as someone who runs the party, is that unusual for, would the party not organize? Like, okay, hey, wait, we want everyone to wait their turn, or how does this work?
Hey, yeah, why didn't you control that situation?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just asking, because I honestly want to know.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend.
And as you answer this question, does it, Larson has a lot of incumbency. Mayor Luke Bronin comes out of Hartford. Does the rest of the state have a good opinion of the Hartford, how the Hartford city was run?
Yeah, you know, look, so first of all, there is, I think, always a misconception. People do think kind of parties decide who the candidates are, and especially in Connecticut with our campaign finance laws, candidates can run. Candidates run, they go and get support, and they are then competing to win that convention and win that primary and be that Democratic endorsed candidate. And many states and territories, they don't have a very deep bench, particularly in more red areas. In Connecticut, we have grown our party, reached out to new people. I've been involved in those efforts to bring more candidates in, and we've got a huge bench, and we've got a lot of people who would love to serve in state and federal office. And so in this situation, it sounds like, you know, Mayor Bronin was ready to run the race and get involved in the 1st congressional district. He was the first one out there to announce against Congressman Larson, and Congressman Larson still has the fight. He is out there. He is all over the district. He is doing the work in Congress as well. So he's actually spending his weeks in D.C. doing the people's work that he's elected to do. And now you have these other 3 individuals that are running that are here every day because they're based in Connecticut, campaigning really hard. So it seems like it's particularly hard fought with Mayor Bronin and with the congressman. As we head to that convention, I think the congressman will do very well. These are people who know him, trust him, like him, have been with him for many years. And Congressman Larson is saying, give me another 2 years. Let me continue to do this work with Social Security, with infrastructure, transportation. But as we have seen around the whole country, there is an appetite that is brewing of folks saying, well, what's next? You know, what's next with our leadership? And it's really ultimately up to those delegates that go into their convention, their congressional convention in May, and say, who do I want to represent me? Is it John Larson, or Luke Bronin, or maybe someone else like a Jillian Gilchrist?
You know, and that's why Jillian Gilchrist delegates are so important, because she will probably get to the point where she says in May during the convention, well, I don't have enough delegate, I can't win, and I'm not going to have enough to primary. But that block of delegates will really matter to you, Luke Bronin, or really matter to you, Congressman Larson. So who is going to gain that? So I think her significance in this race right now is certainly not the money she's raised, because nobody thought she could compete with money raised. But the delegates are a big deal. And Congressman Larson, you know, I would imagine at this point is way ahead with delegates, but it's that primary in August. And if you get 15% of those delegates, you have the choice of primarying. So the goal would be to have Luke Bronin not get those 15% if you're Congressman Larson.
Right, and a primary in August means very low turnout. And so you really need an operation that has funding, that has staffing to bring out your friends, because who is going to vote in a primary in mid-August? It's going to be the most loyal, the most ardent supporters.
Interesting. Yes, in the book Organizing to Win, I know someone who might have written that, Jimmy Tickey. It can come down to, you know, your local elections is where it can come down to a very handful of votes, quite literally.
Absolutely. And with the primary, you're dealing with a specific part of an electorate that's going to come out and vote. Every single vote counts in a primary.
So we expect door-to-door knocking and
lots
things like
of door-to-door knocking. And if it's not the candidate themselves, it's their teams and their staffs and their volunteers out them knocking for them.
And it's a lot of targeted, right? It's very, very targeted at that point, because, as we said, who's even here in August? And if you're here, you're not thinking, oh, I have to go vote. And so it's digital ads, it's TV ads, it's mail, it's door knocking, but very specifically targeted. It's not the entire Democrat, everybody that's registered as a Democrat. It's probably 10% of that, which is a very small amount.
Very small number making these choices. In our final time, I want to check in with John and see how much time we have left, because I do have another question. Okay, so we have a little bit more time. In our final 5 minutes together, I want to ask, it's something that, for the viewers at home, we go over some of the things we might, I don't know what they're going to say, but like here, we want to talk about. So this is not on our agenda. However, I know you guys are both watching it, and that is what's been breaking today is what's happening with the Epstein survivors and Pam Bondi at Capitol Hill having to answer questions, and more people being upset certainly on the Democratic side, and really maybe it's not a partisan issue. On the female side of this, certainly, that this is a wide-ranging sex trafficking operation, and that we only for sure know 2 people so far, and that must be much more. And why are these files so redacted, and what needs to be done? The Epstein victims all joining together today saying they're not going to quit. So, Jimmy, let me start with you. Originally we had the president saying the Epstein files are a distraction, then him signing a law that they have to be released, but yet it seems like they're not getting released in the way that everybody would understand they would be released. So what's your take on this?
Well, let's be honest. This president does not seem to be too interested in releasing unredacted Epstein files. He has played cat and mouse with this for years. This country should do what the victims want. And if they want the unredacted files released, if they want names released, then that should be the case. So it took a while to get to this point. Files are being released. They are very redacted. I'm seeing reports that some members of Congress, and this has been publicly reported, are able to go in and actually see unredacted files. So you are now beginning to see that they are allowing other elected officials to come in to see the unredacted files. Release it. Release the files.
Every last page of that.
If that's what victims want, put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, some of them obviously have really horrific pictures, and I was hearing today one of the representatives saying that she was read in on that private, where they got to look at them, and that she just saw depraved emails going back and forth between very famous, well-known people in every sector of society. So, Themis, what do you think needs to happen here? Is this a partisan issue, or is it not?
Well, I mean, it shouldn't be a partisan issue. Let's just say that. And as far as redaction versus unredacted, non-redacted, I think you have to protect victims to a certain extent too. That's why typically we redact things, you know, in the legal profession. And as somebody who has been very supportive of victim rights with legislation for many years, I mean, certainly I support.
And you're a lawyer.
And I'm a lawyer. I support that. What I don't understand is Ghislaine Maxwell testified, I think, yesterday or the day before, and she took the fifth on everything.
And said, I might have more to say if I get pardoned.
Okay, but here's the problem. Now, nobody would be more upset than me if she got any clemency at all. However, you said this when we first started this conversation. There are other people out there.
Yeah.
That had not just talked to the guy a couple times. Listen, I don't care if you talk to the guy a couple times, whatever. If you were involved in any of this sex trafficking, underage girls, any of the stuff that's bad that we need to really focus on, and these people need to be punished to the full extent of the law, if she has that information, I feel we need to do something to get her to talk. Because if you say to her, just this is my legal brain working, right? If you say, well, you will be protected from any further crimes. You can't be convicted or indicted or anything else on any further crimes we might find you guilty of, because I think that's partially what she's afraid of. She might talk.
She might talk. When she says, I want clemency, though, that's clemency, a full pardon?
And I certainly don't agree with that.
Clemency would be you walk free, right?
But there's got to be a way to work something. If that means she gets a little less time, I mean, I don't support giving her less time, but what I do support is fine. Jeffrey Epstein's dead, so he's not going to be punished, right? Ghislaine Maxwell's already in jail, and she's going to serve many, many years. I have no problem giving her a couple less years if we can find other people that did bad things, because there are other people that did really bad things that are still alive and walking out there, and who knows what they're doing to other underage kids. And because you have to use all the tools in the toolbox, and just to sit there and let her take the fifth on everything, and then we never find anybody else who did anything wrong. I mean, that is such an injustice to those victims also. And
we also can't allow a quid pro quo where she basically says, I'll do whatever you want, but I'm going to get the president off the hook. I mean,
is she trustworthy? Can we believe that she would say something?
That was give me clemency, and I will make sure that I say that, this president was not involved in anything. So we need to really trust what's going to be said.
But that's why you have to kind of cross-reference the files, right? The things that are actually in writing.
Are the answers
with
all in
what
the
she
files?
Says.
Do we think, from a legal perspective?
I don't think all the answers are, because I think there's people maybe that didn't communicate via text or
it's
email.
not written exactly what people did, right? These are his communications with the files. I mean, these are their investigations.
Yeah.
But if it was really clear that person A did A, B, and C, then they likely would have charged that person too, right?
But that's why those victims, they've seen Jeffrey Epstein dead. They've seen her already in jail for many years. There's other people out there, and those people need to be found. That's the real justice to those victims. And I'll tell you, there's got to be a lot out there, but you also have to protect people that really didn't do anything wrong. I mean, I don't know if people know, if you go to the Department of Justice website,
you can search
there's
people's
a
names.
whole section that says Epstein Vault. I have, searched 8 million people's names.
A lot of people's names come up.
A lot of
I'm not
people.
going to name them here, but like random people, like, I wonder if that person who was very high up in that industry, and it turns out they're on some mass email of a party invite
Right, but it's
or
also
whatever.
like, I know a lot of elected officials that are on there that did nothing, had no contact whatsoever, but were on fundraising lists.
Right.
They were
So not
invited just
everyone named may be
exactly that, and that's
guilty, but
and
you
that's
want to get
part
after
of
the
the
ones that
problem,
are.
right? You don't want to just throw everybody out there and say, well, Jimmy Tickey's name was on there, and so he did something
wasn't.
wrong. It wasn't. I'm just saying, but that you didn't do anything wrong. But you may have been invited to a fundraiser, right?
Interesting that the reports have shown, and I haven't cross-referenced myself, that President Obama's name was not in the files, unlike Trump and Clinton. That those names were not in the files.
I don't think it was
Interesting.
part
At that
of his
level,
circles, but
right,
who knows?
maybe not everyone named is guilty or involved, but yes, when you're dealing at that level, you're dealing with major fundraising emails, parties we've never been invited to. You're at a level where assistants are involved, and there's all sorts of gatherings that may not be any of the stuff that has now been proven to be true, but you're just on these emails. But you want to get to the heart of it and what the victims want, which is who else was involved in this in a very bad way,
and the
hold
Department
them
of Justice
accountable.
needs to do everything they can to find if there are other people out there that were part of this.
All right, and that'll do it for the Capitol Rundown, where we are streaming on WFSB Plus, and you can also look for us on the Wax on Friday morning. So thanks for being here. You can also go to WFSB Plus and watch our 2-hour special on the first day of the session, where you saw many of your leaders speaking out to both sides of the aisle. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day.